Well, hello, and welcome to an all-new edition of Folk from the Heartland. I'm your host, Jeff Cannon, coming to you from my underground bunker somewhere in the American heartland. And I'm so excited about today's show, which features a studio interview with fiddle singer extraordinaire, Aleksi Campagne. He's just amazing, very exciting. So I can't wait to share that with you. I thought we'd start off with a little humor. Maybe some of that will come in sometimes. I'm often getting folk jokes. There are lots of folk jokes. They come in a lot of different varieties. Often there's something about the banjo or fiddles, accordions. There's all kinds of instruments that need to be thrown away or flushed down toilets and so forth. And then money. Money is always kind of a major issue in folk music. And so I'll share with you some money jokes that I'm aware of or that kind of come up in various forms. One's a classic. How do you make $1 million in folk music? And of course, the answer is start with 2 million and then quit early. Then there's these kind of pithy ones like there are tens of dollars to be made in folk music, or how many guitars is kind of a corollary. How many guitars does a musician need? And the answer is always one more. And then finally, I got kind of a longer one. This is one of those pearly gates jokes. So a tax accountant and a criminal lawyer and a traditional music all get into a terrible accident, and they end up at the pearly gates together. And St. Peter meets them, of course, and says to them, "Welcome. There's a little game I like to play with all our new arrivals. So before I look you up, tell me how much money you made before you passed over, and then I'll see if I can guess what you did for a living." So the first person starts it off. He steps up. He says, "I made $89,000 a year." St. Peter looks him over and sizes him up, and he says, "I think I've got it. You were a corporate tax accountant." And of course that was right. And so they're all very impressed by this. And so the next person decides to give it a go. And so that person steps up and says, "I made $1.3 million a year plus bonuses last year." And St. Peter is kind of takes a minute on this one, scratches his chin, and he thinks for a minute, and he says, "Criminal lawyer to the rich and famous." They gave him a nice little round of applause, of course, and then the last guy, he pipes up and he steps up. He says, "I made $1,200 a year." And St. Peter instantly says, "Really? What instrument did you play?" So there you have it. So it's kind of the flavor. Okay, so I mentioned that in a few minutes we're going to cut to an interview that was recorded at the annual Folk Alliance International Convention, which was held last year in Kansas City with mega talented Canadian fiddle singer Aleksi Campagne. Really just a wonderful musician. Also the son of a well-known musician, Connie Calder, is a great Canadian folk singer. So he's going to talk with us about what he's up to, and he's going to share some of his insights, his humor, etc. And then along the way here today, I'm going to throw in a few recorded tracks from other people and also a few of his. So first, let's get things started, though, with a little music. So starting us off today is a musician I love. I've always loved his writing. Great writer. He's from the Pacific Northwest. His name is Michael McNevin, and this is from a record maybe 30 years ago called Sketch. This song is called Bagger on Folk from the Heartland.
I bagged groceries at store number 3. I wear a white shirt and tie, no one faster than me. I'm the only bagger here, I work 4 shifts a week. I wet down the produce and I bale up the cardboard. And I mop up the eggs when they drop them on the floor. And I fetch all the shopping carts in front of the store. And I know I'm the low man on the pole, nowhere but up to go for me, the bagger at store number 3. I play along with a checker cracks a joke to help pass the time for the kids and their folks. They say, throw in some candy, man, I'm dying for a smoke. read the gossip in the rags by the stands. They talk about the neighborhood, the heat and the gangs. And I count the bottles they trade in for change, but it stays the same. For the low man on the pole, nowhere but up to go I see the world from store number 3. An old woman comes in here 2 times a month for a 12-pack of lager and a hungry man lunch. I walk her outside, she leans on the cart, then she leans on my memory, she forgot where she parked. Some live on welfare, they got children to feed. Some turn to stealing to get what they need, but mostly they work and spend it like me. As fast as the bagger at store number 3. At night I start sweeping and I straighten up the rows. At 10 I hear my brother say, come on, it's time to close. He got me in here, taught me everything I know. Like when to keep my mouth shut and when to speak my mind. When to take a shortcut and when to take my time. And how to make the people feel it's okay to be in line. And how to give some credit to the low man on the pole. Every time I punch the clock I see the world from store number 3.
If you're traveling in the North Country Fire, where the winds hit heavy on the borderline, remember me to one who lives there. For she once was a true love of mine. If you go when the snowflakes storm, when the rivers freeze and summer ends, please see she has a coat so warm to keep her from the howling winds. Please see if her hair hangs long, it rolls and flows all down her breast. Please see for me if her hair's hanging long, for that's the way I remember her best. I'm wondering if she remembers me at all. Many times I've often prayed in the darkness of my night brightness of my day. So if you're traveling the North Country Fair, where the winds hit heavy on the borderline, remember me to one who lives there. She once was a true love of mine.
Oh, people, look around you. The signs are everywhere. You've left it for somebody other than you to be the one to care. You're lost inside your houses. There's no time to find you now. While your walls are burning and your towers are turning, I'm gonna leave you here and try to get down to the sea somehow. The road is filled with homeless souls, every woman, child, and man who have no idea where they will go. They'll help you if they can. But everyone must have some thought that's gonna pull them through somehow. While the fires are raging hotter and hotter, but the sisters of the sun are gonna rock me on the water now. Rock me on the water. Sister, will you soothe my fever brow? Rock me on the water. I'll get down to the sea somehow. I'll get down to the sea somehow. Oh, people, look among you. It's there your hope must lie. There's a seabird above you, gliding in one place, like Jesus in the sky. We all must do the best we can, and then hang on to that gospel plow. When my life is over, gonna stand before the Father, but the sisters of the sun are gonna rock me on the water now. Rock me on the water. Sister, will you soothe my fever brow? Hey, rock me on water. Maybe I'll remember. Maybe I'll remember now. Rock me on the water. The wind is with me now.
What a wonderful song. That's Paul Simon's Hobo's Blues from his first solo album. I guess it was his first solo album. It was simply self-titled Paul Simon. It was right after the Bridge Over Troubled Water album. And it's just a little deep cut that I always loved from that record. Prior to that, we heard Jackson Browne with Rock Me on the Water, a classic, of course. And before that, Bob Dylan, another classic, Girl from the North Country. And we started off the show this week with Michael McNevins' Bagger, which I just think is one of the great songs that I think about. So I think about a lot about music and the way people write a lot, as of course I'm a singer-songwriter as well. But also, you know, as I think about this show and what it is and what it always was when it was on a conventional radio show, at its core, Folk from the Heartland is about the power of music. That's kind of the big topic that I'm most interested in, and that I know a lot of you are interested in. It's kind of one of the threads that ties together folk music generally across a wide range of genres and define it. So this is a story, actually, that I want to share with you because I think a lot about stories about the power of music. And this is a story, it's a World War II story. It's kind of a genre of its own. And I got this from Joe Thoman's blog. It's a wonderful blog that has all kinds of stories and whatnot. This is a story of an American soldier who landed in Normandy with his trumpet, brought it with him. And the story is both depressing but also hopeful. When Joe went out to keep watch one night, Jack, the character, the soldier, when he went out to keep a watch one night, his captain said, "Don't play tonight because there's a sniper out there." So Jack played anyway, and what happened then is a story that only music can write. Really just an amazing tale. Jack Leroy Tueller was just an ordinary young man. His mother died at the age of 29. His father was an alcoholic. With his siblings, that he grew up with an aunt who gave him a trumpet for his 13th birthday. And at a performance with a 22-piece dance band at the Lake Hotel in Yellowstone Park, he actually met Louis Armstrong and got some nice advice from him. So it was very inspiring. And after high school, he began to study music, but then he applied to the Army to become a pilot. So he started his pilot training at the age of 21, and suddenly he found himself in the middle of World War II, as a lot of young people did at that time. So amazingly, in the story, his trumpet and his parachute were always with him. He kept it with him even when he was flying. And in Operation Overlord, which was the landing of the Allies in Normandy, that was his first mission. So Jack Leroy Tueller flies over 100 missions with a P-47 Thunderbolt in Normandy in the fight against the Germans. And on land and in the air, he always has his unusual companion with him, his trumpet. Carries it with it in a linen bag that's attached to his parachute. So in case he has to bail out, still got his trumpet. So about a week after D-Day in June 1944, his squadron is sent out to attack a German tank division. And as the pilots approach, they see that French women and children are attached to the tanks like shields. Crazy but true. And first the attack is aborted, and then back at base, the commander orders the tanks to fire anyway. And Tueller would really never let go of this experience. He was haunted by the images of what his 50 caliber machine guns had done to the civilians. And every night he played Danny Boy and Lily Marlene and other songs on his trumpet for his comrades and also for himself. For him, it was like a ray of light. It was a way of coping with stress and trauma and what he was going through. And a week later, he had an amazingly moving experience. The question, of course, floating there was, did his music make a difference? And he was ordered to do the night's watch this night and warned beforehand by the captain not to play the trumpet. He said, "There's an enemy sniper out there," but Jack thought, he's as lonely and scared as I am. I'm going to play him a song. And he did. He played his trumpet. And the next morning, a prisoner of war was taken to the camp. And it quickly became clear that the sniper had seen Jack, but had not pulled the trigger. And he asked, who was the trumpet player who played Lily Marlene last night? And because when I heard that song, the war was over for me. I couldn't use my rifle anymore. So Jack Leroy Tueller tells us about the power of music in this story, of what it can really do. What sounds like a fairy tale here is a true story. Famously on D-Day, of course, the Allies liberated Europe. June 6th of 44 was the beginning of the end of the Second World War with landing of the Allies in Normandy, and among them was the American pilot Jack. In his life that lasted 95 years, the soldier with the trumpet, as he was called, repeatedly told this amazing story of the connecting power of music. I love this story for that. He died in Utah on August 15th of 2016, and Lily Marlene is still played on many trumpets around the world. So it's just a wonderful story about this power of music, something I just believe wholeheartedly in. So I wanted to share that with you, and I'll try on most of our shows to bring some kind of stories of this kind, because I just think this is the kind of thing that reminds us that music is doing so much more than just sort of minorly entertaining us. So back to the music here. This is Ellis Paul from his brand new record 55, and this is called Cosmos.
I'm one of the flock, riding this rock across the cosmos. And before I'm a ghost, I'll thank the host and tell what a wild ride it's been. I've touched the sun and the sea. I've followed the truth in me. I've seen the divine. You are divine. I've seen the divine in you. And I had a child, perfect and wild. Isn't she lovely? More friends than most, I don't mean to boast. All the love surrounds me. I've touched the sun and the sea. I follow the truth in me, and I've felt their love. I've held their love. I've seen their love in me. My hands till they turn to sand. I've tasted sweet wine. I sang all the songs. I played along till the last words were sung by me. I've touched the sun and the sea. I follow the truth in me. I've seen the divine. I sang the songs. I felt your love in me.
From my house up on the hill, I can hear the dogs barking all night long. Around 3 a.m. the boss tires banging down in the yard. Morning Memphis, I try.
We just heard Louise Taylor with Morning Memphis. Prior to that, Ellis Paul with Cosmos. We've got coming up a special interview with Aleksi Campagne. It's just an extraordinary artist. I want to, before we cut to the interview that I taped with him, I want to share with you one of his songs. This is a song called Je te laisserai des mots. I think it means I leave these words or leave some words. But it's a translate. He talks a little bit about this song because it went actually viral on TikTok, and I don't know what the conditions were of that, but he talked a little bit about this in our interview that's coming up. So before we get to that interview, I just want to share this song with you. A wonderful little tune. Je te laisserai des mots, Aleksi Campagne.
Da 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 da. I will leave you these words underneath your door, underneath the walls that sing along with the beat of your feet that pass by from inside the holes of your couch where they hide. And when you're alone for a moment in time, take me whenever you want to kiss me, whenever you want to take me, whenever
Well, we're welcoming here into studio as such as it is here in Kansas City at the Folk Alliance International Convention. A wonderful young artist, Aleksi Campagne. Heard you play this weekend. Heard you play last year. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on here. And I'm not sure where to begin, how to think about what you do. Describe what you do. Your fiddle playing, your distinctive voice and style, melodic sort of sensibilities, which are just so cool. What you do, your music kind of cuts across a lot of influences, so it's a lot of things. How do you describe what you do? What's your version of here's what I do?
Right. Well, it is a conference, so you do have to come prepared with the elevator pitch, they call it.
Right.
I'm a fiddle singer, I'm an indie folk kind of fiddle singer. So there's a lot of examples of fiddle singing in traditional music, in bluegrass, in old time Quebecois fiddle singing is and I grew up seeing a lot of those, going to folk music festivals and seeing a lot of those acts. And I then went and studied classical music, jazz, violin, and improvisation, and all sorts of other things. And so when it came time for me to write my own music, I kind of pulled on a lot of that, and I'm doing kind of an indie folk style of singing, because that's what I like to listen to. That's what inspires me. And so, yeah, I call it kind of indie folk fiddle singing.
Fiddle singer. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Are there other indie folk fiddle
What?
singers?
I mean, I haven't met them yet.
Yeah.
If somebody out there knows them, please send me their profiles. I'd love to meet them. No, I mean, it's definitely a niche thing, but to be able to write songs, that are very lyric focused, very singer songwriter things, but to have the basis not be a piano or guitar, but to be a violin is a different. It's a different starting point, and it leads to some interesting compositions.
Yeah.
So,
You grew up in an extraordinarily musical family. This is the elephant in the room question.
Of course.
So maybe you could tell our listeners who don't know, tell our listeners about that, who don't know who you are from that standpoint and where you come from. So what?
Yeah. So my parents are folk musicians. My mother, Connie Calder, is a folk singer from Saskatchewan, and she's an incredible songwriter. Has just launched her 18th album in November, and is celebrating 45 years in folk music. And a great inspiration, and I think a huge reason why I write my own songs, because she built her own career writing original music, and is a true songwriter, a creative, very, very creative songwriter, an incredible performer. So I grew up touring with her. Me and my brother were in the back of the van for her tours, and she never let that stop her from her career and from her touring. And very early on, we were selling the merch at her shows, and
before you were playing
counting
along.
20 bills. Yeah. And then she realized that because we wanted to sing, so she would bring us on to sing a song in the first half of the show, and then at halftime we'd be selling CDs, and we would get a nice little crisp $20 bill at the end of the night for our, and it was great. We loved it. We loved performing. We loved singing. And so, I kind of grew up in that world, going to folk festivals, seeing that side of the live music scene, and this folk community here that is at the conference as well. It's a very tight knit community, and I grew up there. And my dad also is in a band called Heart Rouge. My dad, Paul Campagne, he sang with his sisters. So he started out in a band with his 6 sisters, all 7 of them, in a band called Fol Avoine. And then a band called Heart Rouge later on with 3 of his sisters. And he's Francophone from Saskatchewan, which is, they're both, my parents are from Saskatchewan, but he's, they did their whole career singing in both English and French, singing traditional French songs, but kind of pop vocals, 4-part harmonies, really, it was all about the vocals for them, and some really amazing stuff. And now he tours. Now he's part-time farmer, and he tours with my mom, and it produces her albums, and plays with her, plays guitar, bass, and sings. So
can I ask, farming of what? What kind of farm?
Yeah. He's got a grain farm in southern Saskatchewan. So organic grains. Yeah. Him and his sister all of his sisters and the whole family inherited the farm, but he works at it about half of the year with his sister Solange, and they grow all sorts of organic grains, kamut, wheat, lentils, that kind of thing.
That's so cool. You define yourself as a bilingual musician, right? I mean, that's part of what you say about yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. So an artist, which I find interesting, and I wonder if that's kind of an aspect of Canadianness generally, that you're bringing together these different language systems and maybe even cultures in some ways. Is that kind of endemic to being Canadian?
I think that's what I'm trying to showcase in a way. Canada is a wonderful country in that it is built on both languages they're both official languages, right? And it's a big part of it's in the government, it's in the legislature, everything is, and it has to be both languages because of the way it was formed and all of that. And I think that there's a lot of places that are primarily English speaking and primarily French speaking. It can be kind of separate, and a lot of the cultures around those things are a little bit separate. But there's so many people that are bilingual in Canada. A lot of people in Western Canada, where my dad is from, there's a lot of French immersion schools that are there, and there's a lot of work that's done to preserve French there. He did that kind of with his music, and my grandfather worked really, really hard to preserve French in a minority speaking region, and so that's really important. It was really important for me growing up. My grandfather and my grandmother both got the award. They have an achievement award called l'Ordre de la Francophonie, and they both received it for independently for their services in their communities and all of that. And so that was really, really important for me. And the reason why we moved to Montreal and why I was born there and grew up there was because they were touring a lot in French, and they were doing that, and that's where there's a bigger audience there in Quebec. And I grew up in Montreal, and I'm fully bilingual, because of my parents and the way they raised me, and they were very, purposeful in that. And it's the experience of a lot of other people, I think, across everywhere in Canada. But things still seem to be kind of separate. Like the school systems are very separate a lot of the times, and
depending on the language system,
depending on where you live, depending on what services you have available to you, it can be very separate. And so that's part of what I want to kind of showcase, is that it doesn't have to be separate. You can live pretty equally in both languages, and I try to live that as much as I can. And that's part of why I wanted to release this music in both languages. I know there's a lot of other artists that release some releases. They'll have like part languages, part songs in different languages. But I was in this kind of unique opportunity. I have a unique opportunity to have support from my family to help me actually translate the album. So I have the 10 songs in English, and then the same 10 songs also in French. So everything was translated. Everything has 2 versions. And my aunt, Michelle Campagne, who was in the group with my dad, was able to help me do that, because it's a whole other skill to develop. You have to be a songwriter. You have to be bilingual completely, and a musician to be able to kind of work out what you need to do to translate the song and keep the same melody and harmony and everything and meaning.
Yeah, you can imagine that there's some translation involves even sort of transferring one set of images for a different set of images that maybe translates better in another language.
Exactly. And
still gets the same idea.
Yeah. So we were able to work together at the source and really come up with, okay, like I'm trying to say this, so maybe we use a different metaphor to say the same thing, or we change the chorus, the meaning of the chorus or something, to make it fit. And what I loved with that creatively is that it's really, really interesting to have to revisit that and make some changes. And everybody always talks about what's lost in translation, and how it changes. But with this kind of process, I feel like you gain a lot in translating it, because if you know both versions, if you can speak both languages, you can see 2 different perspectives of the same story. And there isn't one that came first. They're really, to me, and she helped me do a really good job for that, where both feel, very, very powerful. And there's some verses that I prefer in one language, even if it wasn't the one that I originally wrote, and so that feels great to be able to do that. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it pans out.
So this bringing together of these languages and cultures and so forth, the approach. There must be some political conflict or contestation, I guess, around those different. Is there tension around the French and English kind of?
Yeah, I mean there always is, and whether you go to really rural places anywhere in the country, it's like anything, people will be upset at things they don't understand, or cultures or things that they don't see right and understand. And I'm in Montreal, and I was born there and I was raised there, and the language is always a really big hot issue for Quebec. You know, the politicians right now are making sure that the English schools are getting hit with language things that don't have anything to do with people actually speaking French. It just has to do with punishing, English universities, or the fact that when I speak English, I don't have an accent. Therefore, I'm considered Anglophone, even though I can speak French very, very well. And my father experienced that when he came to Quebec. He had a different accent, and so people were trying to place him, and didn't understand. And there's a weird thing that happens in Quebec where it's really hardcore part of their identity is speaking French in that specific way, and so that can be hard. But at the end of the day, I don't aspire to that. I don't conform to that, and I really. I want to be an example of living bilingually, which I do, and I'm not ashamed of, and I'm not gonna. I don't want to forego my English heritage in the same way that I don't want to forego my French heritage. They're both half of me, and they're both just as important. And when I'm answering a form for something, and they ask me what's my first language, I have to check a box because. But
unless you draw circles and arrows on the document, say this.
Like it still feels like there's examples in places like that where you're like, it doesn't seem like there's any place for me to be both at the same time. All the awards are language based. Like I'm thrilled to be. Like with my debut album this year, I was nominated for a Canadian Folk Music Award, which is incredible. And I'm super, super grateful for that. But when I'm applying for my album, I have to apply in separate categories, like
English language.
for French language artist or whatever. And then, and I have this nomination for Francophone Songwriter of the Year, which is incredible. And, and then you kind of go through the rules and you're like, am I even allowed to apply here? Because the album is supposed to be a certain percentage of French and, things like that. And and my album is fully bilingual. Like I consider it, okay, mathematicians maybe will be upset, but it feels like it's 100% each, like there's no kind of concessions here. Like really there's two versions of every song. So it doesn't really fit in categories like that. Is
it a similar kind of, the questions are kind of similar in an odd way, although it's a different topic, but the bringing together the parts of yourself as an artist. Because on the one hand, you're a fiddle player that you play with others as well, but then you're an artist, a solo artist, and I mean, is it also similarly a struggle to kind of unify to maintain your unified self and to present a unified self that way?
Yeah, that can be tough. I mean, that's part of what it is to be an artist, is coming up with, how are you actually going to describe yourself and where you're going to fit, and it's a discourse. The result that I gave in my album doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somewhere, and identifying those things is part of the battle. And it's hard as an artist to go, okay, where am I pulling from here, and where do I fit in this thing, even if I feel like I'm coming up with something that I haven't seen before or is original or whatever. It's still coming from somewhere, and it's coming from this, my upbringing in the folk community. And liking more indie folk and more kind of spacey things, and softer songs, and like there's all of that kind of all fit together, and that's part of building an album and recording an album.
Speaking of bringing in things from other places, I was knocked out by your version of Wheels Like a Chevrolet. That just blew me away, and I've been known the song for a bit. But I just was like, this is special what you did. And also the video, which is special. Can you talk about your version of that song, and then also how you translated it to the video? Because I don't know if you would call that viral, but I know a lot of people who watched it. Tell me about that song and how that. Right.
Which video are you talking about?
The one that's in sort of a warehouse setting.
Warehouse? Yeah. Okay.
With the looping and all the.
So that was. That's always been a part of my struggle. Is I always feel like. from my upbringing, playing live shows with my parents, and in that folk scene, Connie's, my mom, Connie Calder, her force has really been the live show. Like, her performance is incredible. She's very funny. She comes from a theater training background, so she really puts on a fantastic show, a world-class show. And I always felt like my live performance was really good, and I always had a difficulty of translating that to an email, or translating that to a video, translating that to a format, because it feels like when people see me play the violin and sing at the same time, they get it, or they're like, wow, that's interesting, or that's different. But that doesn't come across on a just audio basis, or just a thing. So we've been, I've kind of been bracking my brain for a long time on how can I actually do this, and I worked with a friend of mine for the video, Luca Gallant, and part of it was we're going to actually, get some good equipment. We're going to film this video that includes the loop station. Yeah. It's a live take, which I do live all the time, and it's fine. Like, that's the odd, like, doing the performance is not the issue, but finding a way that we were going to, translate that to video has been tough. And over time, we've tried different things, which was, that video in the warehouse has been great. It's worked out for me for quite some time now, and booking some shows and doing all sorts of things. And then recently I did a video series for my album, where we did the whole album one takes, like a single take camera with no editing, really just to show that it's all happening live. Because even I would make videos on Facebook of like covers of things, and I would loop them, and it would be just in my living room with my phone, and people would still be like, no, this is fake, or this is not, like, where is this coming from? Like, you edited the audio after or something. Like, they found it hard to believe. So we're like, okay, we're gonna do single take. Like, there's no doubt here that there's nothing funny happening.
The depth of that space that you're in, it's really striking against how static, how still you are, how the camera just holds you there, but the depth of the space works against it. So it's really powerful the way it was shot. I mean, personally, a really beautiful shot. So, yeah, it's great. I mean, I showed it to my kids. They went, "Oh, my God, who is this?" Then my younger daughter, Abby, who's a documentary film person, says, "I know him. I know what he does." And she said, "There's something viral on TikTok or one of these. There's some song that is that right? There's something out there. Tell me what that is. I should know.
Yeah, sure. Me. So that's I made a TikTok video actually, a couple months ago now, where I translated a song. So Patrick Watson's a Montreal artist that I love, and he had a viral song on TikTok called "Je te laisserai des mots." That's French, and it's beautiful with strings, and he sings, and it's great. But I realized that, it's actually a really short song. Lyrically, it's very short. So as practice for my, like, this translating thing that I did with my album, I thought, what if I translated it to English? Because I know that people, it's a different emotional kind of experience when you hear the song in real time with the lyrics, rather than maybe reading a translation or something like that. And it's a creative process. It's slightly different, meaning, you're not translating word for word. So I did that. I just translated his song into English the best I could, and I recorded and I posted it, and it blew up. It's now at I think 1 million views on TikTok, which is great. And
what the heck?
Yeah, what the heck? I know
that's not folk music stuff. It
was very surprising. Well, I laughed because it's like one of the few piano covers that I did on TikTok, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I should do more piano stuff. But
I think it's something bigger than that.
Yeah. But I was really happy that worked out, because it's part of what I'm trying to do, which is show language, the difference in languages, and it is a cover. It's not my original song, but it still is very close to important to me to showcase that. And so I'm really happy about that. And now I play it at shows.
That's pretty cool. That's
cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And, I just did it myself. I recorded it. And then I put a version on Spotify too, of me doing the full song.
Gotcha.
So it's up there, but I had a lot of fun with that. And now I'm looking to do some more of that stuff.
For some artists, folk music is kind of code for low key production and maybe
Mhm.
some identifiable connection to traditional musics of some kind,
Mhm.
or sort of genre based.
Yeah.
But then other artists seem to be more linked to purpose, whether it's political or social or some other kind of purposeful music in some more purposeful way. And so I asked this question. It's a broad question. It's a terrible,
Yeah.
so kind of almost closing question.
Yeah.
But folk, what is folk for? Like
Mm.
I mean, because there is something more to it than just being
Yeah.
low key production and
Sure.
So
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a great question. I have a lot of different perspectives on this. I took a folk history, like a folk and pop history class in university, actually, that helped give me a lot of context on stuff like this, because people were asking this question in the 60s and the 70s, especially when like Bob Dylan started playing with electric instruments. People freaked out and they were like, this isn't folk music. And people really started asking themselves, well, what is folk music? And like, it's not a full answer here, but the folk music community here encompasses a lot of things, which is, like you said, different cultural music, world music, and that there's the through line there for me that seems to be acoustic based things. There's an acoustic element that seems to link all of those things, whether it's Americana or world music of any kind of ethnicity, and that's cool. That's great. And I think in North America, when we say folk music, it also encompasses singer-songwriter and American, very American traditional music, essentially. Europe has its classical music, that's their traditional, and folk music is very American.
Like our Appalachian kind of strain,
yeah. Well, Appalachian, I mean, North American, I guess, in general, the idea of a singer-songwriter that's going to write political songs, it's a very, a thing. And I see that's my kind of perspective, because when you say folk music in French, music folk, it has a different meaning. Like you would say like American folk music when you're talking about singer-songwriter, but folklorique just means traditional, right? Like just
the way we use the word traditional.
The way we would use traditional in English, you would say folk in French when you're speaking in French. So it's just, and that's just like a word, a language thing. But to me, it helps kind of distinguish, okay, folk can encompass kind of all of these things. And then for me, like indie folk just adds kind of, it's just a genre or a color that you add to, the type of songs that you write, or the production, production. When I produced my album, I really wanted to work with a producer that would like take it to something else, and that wouldn't just kind of recreate the live sound, but also, with layering and effects and all sorts of all the tools that we would have available in the studio. I wanted to use them to create something new, And so that was part of why, and that's what I like about a lot of indie folk music or indie rock music is the production and the different sounds and the different textures. So, that's, for me, that's kind of the subgenre also, even if it can start including electronic music, that's, or electronic elements, synths, or anything like that. That's just kind of a bit of a color palette.
Another tool,
another brush that you're going to use, so that's, I guess, maybe that answered that. I don't know.
It did. I think it did. So,
I guess there's no more debate. We know now what folk music is.
We finally,
thank God, after all this time, I'm so glad that we've ironed it out.
What else? Let's cover world peace and say, what do you have? The last question I want to ask, because I know we're running short on time, but what do you have cooking this year in 2024? What are you working on, and what does the year kind of look like generally, broadly?
Yeah. Well, a lot of things things are picking up a lot for me. I'm touring a lot more. I'm playing in the US for the first time, which is really exciting. I got like New Discovery of the Year kind of award from Penguin Eggs and Roots Music Canada, which is kind of like a folk publication. That's really great. I got the Canadian Folk Music nomination coming up in April. I'm going to get to perform at the awards show, which is really exciting. And I'm doing a climate concert in Halifax in March also to announce, like, they're doing a climate summit. So and they're gonna give awards to some musicians for their environmental contributions. So I get to play my song Rome, which is kind of like an environmental song there.
Yeah.
So like all of these things are starting to happen, and I'm starting to meet more and more interesting people, and it's really exciting.
And you're not overwhelmed by all that.
I am, but I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna manage. So right now I'm touring a lot, and I'm touring my music that I launched last summer. And I'm working on, I have to write more music, and I'm working on more music to be able to record. I don't know when I'm going to record or release that, but I'm working on it.
So you're sort of that record has its life still going. And
I'm touring the album and working on kind of what I'm going to do next. But there's a lot of shows coming up, and when I write some more stuff, I'll probably be posting about it. So there's that too.
Awesome. Yeah. That's well, I want to thank you for doing this. I know it's taking time
pleasure.
out of this crazy convention.
No, this is great.
It's awesome. So, and I want to, thank you for putting up with our makeshift studio here, and also for your performance in the room last night, and which was a killer performance. Thank you so much for doing that, and can't wait to hear what you got coming ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
If I had wheels like a Chevrolet, I would roll on down that big highway, and I wouldn't stop till I was by your side. If I had wheels, I would ride, ride, ride. What would your mama say if she could see the way we kissed behind the backyard tree? She'd say those boys, they'll love from dusk till dawn. When the sun comes up, they're up and gone. If wishes were money, I'd buy everything. If hopes were golden, I would wear your ring. If you hadn't gone to where the jobs were good, if you'd written like you said you would. So if I had wheels like a Chevrolet, I would roll on down that big highway, and I wouldn't stop till I was by your side. If I had wheels, I would ride, ride, ride. When love is new, it's a raging fire. You cannot wait It's a funeral pie. You miss them so much. So if I had wheels like a Chevrolet, or I would roll on down that big highway, and I wouldn't stop until I was by your side. If I had wheels, I would ride, ride, ride. If I had wheels, I would ride, ride, ride.
Well, that's Aleksi Campagne with Wheels Like a Chevrolet, a song written by his mom, his mother, Connie Caldor, who's a renowned folk musician in Canada. So I hope you enjoyed the interview with him. I know I did. And we'll be doing this in every show, of course. Next week, or the next episode, maybe not as regular as all that, then we'll have an interview with Jason Wilbur. Same kind of thing. Interview with Jason. If you don't know who he is, Jason was John Prine's longtime sideman, his guitar player. I mean, for 20-something years, he was a sideman. But he is a great singer-songwriter in his own right. Jason is. He recently released a record called Time Traveler, which is his 9th solo CD. And it's a beautiful record. It displays his honest, understated, impressionistic kind of sensibility, very image-oriented, and kind of takes you into these spaces, each song. Every song is a highlight. But my favorites are Poet's Life, All I've Got Left Is Time, and then the ominous song Spider. So I'll leave it to you to listen to some of his tracks. We'll play next episode like we did with Aleksi's, and we'll look forward to hearing from Jason in that next show. So that brings us to the close of the episode. Thanks for joining us on folkfromtheheartland.com. And my name is Jeff Cannon, of course. Thanks for joining us today. Check back on the folkfromtheheartland.com for news about the coming episodes and about our talented guests that are coming. Again, this is Jeff Cannon. Be good to each other and to yourself, please.
The show begins, yeah.